was another changes packages about that.
Yeah.
All right, welcome everyone. Regular council agenda as well as committee of adjustment for today, Monday, April the 22nd. We're going to start with committee of adjustment first. Before I call that meeting to order, Deputy Mayor Hall and Councillor Fegan are both off under the weather this evening, and Councillor Sample is away on holidays. So we're going a little short-handed, but we do have a quorum. So we'll call our committee of adjustment meeting to order at 6:32. Tonight we have a public meeting which is being held under section 53 of the Planning Act to consider two separate consent applications. The first application, which is under number B24/01, is for the property located at 616 Owen Sound Street. The purpose and effect of this application is to sever a portion of the property to have a land area of approximately 355 square meters to create a new residential lot for a semi-detached dwelling on the subject land. The retained land will have an area of approximately 356 square meters and is proposed as well to be used for a semi-detached dwelling. The existing single detached dwelling currently on that location is proposed to be demolished as part of this application. The second application, which is under number B24/02, is for the property located at 250 Main Street East. The applicants on this application previously submitted an application for consent in 2022, along with a zoning bylaw amendment. Both of those applications were approved on May 30th, 2022. The applicant is now applying for an additional consent for the property in order to obtain a certificate for the retained portion of the lands. In making the previous application, they did not request that certificate to be provided for the retained portion, so the committee's decision was specifically in reference to the severed lot only. So at this point, I would ask the clerk for the method of notice for tonight's meeting.
Notice of tonight's public meeting was advertised in local media sources. Notice is posted on the town of Sheldon website. And property owners within a 60-meter radius of each property have been notified.
Okay. So in the case of each application tonight, we will receive a presentation from our town planner, Steve Weaver. He'll provide a summary of the written comments received. After that, will be an opportunity for members of the committee to ask questions, as well as members of the public who are here. And then the committee will make a decision in respect of each of the applications in turn. So with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you for the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few slides just to kind of provide some graphics to explain the application a little bit. I'm going to move my screen over here a little bit just so you can see it better. So this application B2401 is summarized in my planning report in the committee's agenda. That's report P2024-04 for 616 Owen Sound Street. And this application was submitted by RDA Designs. So the location of the subject property is on the west side of Owen Sound Street. This is an area characterized by a mix of existing single detached and semi-detached dwellings. Just off the page, but to the northeast is Orvis Crescent with the development that's semi-detached. The R2 zoning of the area does permit both single and semi-detached, and some landowners have taken advantage of that. A few years ago to the south, a similar severance was applied for and approved by the committee for the property immediately to the south, 612 Owen Sound Street. And you can see the result of that application is a semi-detached dwelling has been constructed there on 2 lots. So a total of 2 units straddling the lot line. Each unit is on its own lot. This application is basically looking to do the same thing, and we've just kind of roughly sketched in the location of the lot line that's proposed down the center of the lot. Just as a visual for the current context, you can see the existing single detached dwelling is 1 story, and built a number of years ago. They are the style of the wider shorter dwelling, and these lots reflect that as well as wider lots that were characteristic of that time. You kind of see on the left side of the photo, half of the semi-detached dwelling to the south. And as I say, that is permitted by the current zoning on the lots in this area, which are R2. And a similar type of dwelling is proposed on this spot, following the demolition of the existing single detached dwelling. And next slide. So the details of the proposed severance are shown on this severance sketch provided by RDA Designs. Owen Sound Street's on the left-hand side of the screen in this case. The dwelling, as I mentioned, would straddle the lot line with a common wall along the private garages and a portion of the dwelling. And you can see there's a mutual driveway that's proposed in the center of the lot, so there's only one point of access to Owen Sound Street, and each has their own independent driveway that are joined to the lot line. The two lots meet all of the applicable zoning requirements, and there are no related variances or zoning changes proposed or required for the severance. The retained lot is shown in green, so that's for the purposes of these types of application, we just have to define which is the severed lot and which is the retained lot. But in this case, they're essentially the same. And as I mentioned, the two lots, both the severed and retained, comply with the R2 zoning requirements. This table summarizes in the second column from the left the required lot area, frontage, and yard requirements, as well as lot coverage maximum for the R2 zone. And then to the right, the provided statistics are based on the severance plan for the severed lot and the retained lot. So again, it's dividing the lot pretty much evenly, 355 square meters for each of the proposed lots, 10.67 meters in the frontage, and the minimum yards are all met as well, met or exceeded. They are maximizing the full coverage of the lot, so up to 35% of the lot can be used for the dwelling itself, and for both the severed and retained lot. The owner or the proponent is suggesting they would use the full 35%. So the application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. Notice was given, as mentioned by Jennifer. We did receive a public comment, and I'm not sure if the committee received that. So just so committee is aware, there was a letter submitted from Tyler McLaughlin, 615 Willow Street, and has been considered in relation to this application. The property that this relates to is just immediately behind the proposed lot that's subject to the severance application. And the owner of that property just had expressed some opposition to the proposed severance. Specifically, the concern is with respect to the proposed semi-detached dwelling. The concern being that it may have a detrimental impact on the community, mention well-being of their family as well as neighboring families in the community. More specifically, they feel that the proposed development is too large for the area, that the type of housing is out of character for the neighborhood. It will impact the lives of the people that live around it. They also reference that the construction activity will generate noise in the neighborhood, and that there are many young families, including their own, that may be impacted by that. And regarding aesthetics, they are concerned that this type of housing will alter the character of the area, which is characterized by mature lots and homes, and describe the proposal as a monolithic high-density style of housing. So the request is to reconsider the proposed severance and development, and just generally that the comment that the development is not the right fit for the neighborhood. And that this sort of development is meant for newer parts of town. And the last comment is just let's all hold on to our heritage. So that was considered, and you may recall in recent years for infill severances like this, where they're in older parts of town, we did require some information from the applicant on how the design of the dwelling would fit with the heritage character or historic character of older dwellings. The dwellings in this area don't really have a particular heritage or architecturally significant character. But nevertheless, we have included in the recommended conditions of approval that design guidelines would still apply here, so we have a better idea of how this dwelling would be designed, that roof lines are complementary and so forth. I do want to highlight that it's not the severance itself that allows the construction of a two-story semi-detached dwelling on the property, that could occur on any of these lots with a building permit and a demolition permit for removal of an existing dwelling, because both single and semi-detached dwellings are permitted on all of these lots.
And sorry, Steve, just on that point, I mean, in theory, if the owner of the existing single detached home, you know, could apply for a building permit rather than that strips the roof off and adds a second story.
Exactly, yeah, so it does permit that in the height requirements of the bylaw, both for single and semi-detached. And really the only thing that this application does is allow those two units attached or semi-detached to be owned separately. So each on its own lot. And on the last slide, I just highlighted the conditions. Those are detailed more fully in my report. One notable change is in the first condition, we're recommending that as this applicant has requested a certificate for both the severed and retained lot, that they're required to obtain those two certificates as the last item. And that will allow them the flexibility of selling either the severed or retained lot first, it doesn't matter the order. 5% of the value of one of the lots is required in the form of cash in parkland, which the town can use for its acquisition of parkland or upgrading of existing parks. A consent agreement, we'll go through all the details of that. That will come back to council for if this application is given conditional approval. That's a standard requirement. It deals with all the details of safe servicing, drainage, driveways, demolition of the existing dwelling, the requirement related to trees, if there are any changes to trees existing on the town boulevard, the design guidelines that I mentioned, and then any fees associated with the development. There is a servicing easement at the back of these lots. The sanitary sewer comes in at each logs from the back. So similar to the lot to the south, we're recommending condition to require solicitor's undertaking to ensure that that easement is carried forward onto the severed and retained lots. That easement allows the town to go in and access that sewer line if the town ever needs to do repair, maintenance, or replacement. And then finally, the draft reference plan is required to survey the severed and retained lots. And those conditions have to be satisfied within 2 years. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So like I said, we'll entertain questions and comments first from the committee, and then we'll open it up to members of the public.
Just a couple of questions, Steve. First of all, I noticed that the lot, and most of them do, slope down considerably towards the north. They've got quite a slope going down. When the building is being built, are we making sure, because there's been complaints in the past, both of flooding in the backyards of the neighbors to the west, and we heard that on the last, the semi-detached beside there when it was built, the same complaints about flooding even now currently happening in that area. And we want to make sure that no flooding happens towards the north property, considering, and I saw it on the picture, there's quite a considerable slope on that piece of property going down towards the north. So how do we make sure that they know that I know our engineers, and I'm sure staff, our director of development and operations, will be sure that on their part, that doesn't happen. We have to satisfy ourselves as well as the neighbors around there that that does not happen. Secondly, how do we make sure, because I also noticed on your picture that the neighbor to the north has, I guess, a hot tub pool or something in the backyard. I know with semi-detached, 2 stories, the height of the property, the overlooking of the neighbors, how do we make sure that we don't have windows, for example, on the 2nd story facing, so, because that's the first complaint you always get from somebody. They don't want their privacy invaded in any form or way. So how do we make sure that also doesn't happen? Is that through the design guideline?
I'll address the first question. The requirement for detailed operating and servicing plan will be part of the consent agreement. And we'll have more details about that when we go back to council with that. The basic requirement of those plans and they're reviewed by the town engineers and Jim, and then ultimately implemented through an inspection. But the basic requirement is that however the drainage is flowing now, it can't be worse than that after the construction. So if the drainage is carrying drainage from another lot to an approved outlet, it has to continue to facilitate that. If it increases the permeable space on the lot, it has to direct that to a space that won't impact neighbors. And to the extent that existing drainage issues are known or identified as part of the review of this at that stage, we would obviously work with the owner to resolve that. With respect to the design, it really isn't a matter within the scope of the design guidelines that we can restrict windows on the 2nd story of the dwelling. That's something that's dictated by the building code. Certain rooms, bedrooms, for example, have to have a certain amount of daylighting. And what I do find is that for the most part, any windows on the 2nd story on the side of these dwellings are usually windows that are covered on the inside anyways, because they're related to washrooms or that kind of thing, or hallways, so not windows that people would regularly be looking outwards from, because those are generally designed to the front and back. But we don't have detailed floor plans for the dwelling. You can certainly look at that and encourage the owner to minimize the chances of overlook at the sides. That can't necessarily, don't have enough power through those guidelines to restrict windows if they want to provide them on the sides.
And I guess if I can ask the final part. Final part is, in our design guidelines, I have a real distaste for land. I know it has its uses, but at least some of the building would look a lot more appropriate within that area. Because if you notice, the majority of those houses are brick, that some brick be put on that and not all white. And that can be done through the design guide.
Yes, we can prescribe the types of materials we definitely want to see, at least in the front facade, to create more of an attractive front elevation, as well as being more in keeping with the types of materials used in the area. So we'll include some reference to that in the design guidelines.
Else in the committee at this point? I'll circle back again.
Yeah, do we know the applicant, is someone who currently lives in Shelburne already, or?
All I know is the applicant RDA Designs filed it on behalf of the owner. It seems that RDA is the company that provides the services in terms of laying out the plan and doing drafting and design work, as opposed to taking ownership.
Right, okay, and I guess we wouldn't know if one of the buildings will then be retained, or they're both gonna be sold, because they're asking for a certificate for both of them to potentially be sold. No,
No, I don't.
I just find sometimes when you live in one of the buildings, then you're more likely to want things to work properly. You know, like drainage and things like that. I mean, as we're seeing that, if they're like Bernardo, Councilor Bernardo said, there's quite a slope there. So I'm worried that with disturbing that current slope, you're gonna have to create almost like a retaining wall for the other lot, and then, you know, retaining walls can, there's a love-hate relationship with retaining walls. Because in 20 years from now, whose responsibility is it then to fix that retaining wall when it potentially starts to fail? So, yeah, okay, those are kind of just my questions I thought of off the top of my head.
So Steve, a question, you said that putting a second story on that is more characteristic or as characteristic with the houses as that community as opposed to severing, is that correct?
No, I think what we call it was, most of the homes on that street are single story, but, they are all permitted to have a second story on the current zoning.
The windows, sorry, the Willow Street side has some second stories. If I'm not
I think so, yes.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Okay, any issues with 612,
Yeah.
that property, that would be a, the big concerns,
I haven't heard any complaints. Not for-
so that was done in the past,
Yeah, just a couple years back.
yeah.
It doesn't, the only issue with 612 was if you look at it, it sticks out like a sore thumb within the community. It doesn't fit the characteristic of the current community that's
Right,
on the street. And I really don't have an issue with two-story semi-detaches necessarily, but what I do have an issue is when privacy is disturbed of the neighbors, and with the height of the property and the lowering of the property to the north of it. Currently, and then a two-story being put up on top. You can imagine that if you've got a whole series of big windows within that side, for example. That your neighbor's sitting there thinking, well, that's the last time I'm going into that pool. Meanwhile, somebody's staring at me through the window.
right,
I mean, it's hard when you live in town, right? Because there's always gonna be only so much privacy you can actually have, but I understand what you mean. Like, I do get that too. I see both sides.
Yes, cedar trees can be put up, fencing, things of that nature.
Okay, so what we'll do at this point, I will ask if there are any public questions or comments. If the applicants are here, after those questions or comments, are made, you certainly have an opportunity to add something as well, and then I'll ask the committee for any final questions or comments before we look at a decision. So, if there are members of the public who wish to ask a question or make a comment, I would just ask that before you begin, state your name and address for the record, and then go ahead. So, yes, sir.
I'm Tom McLaughlin, I'm at 615 Willow.
Thank you.
Is it okay if you pull up a picture of 616 Owen Sound Street for me, just so I can council may reference that? So I just want to point out, I am a two-story detached directly behind this house, and you cannot see my house in this picture. In saying that, council stated that, okay, it would be appropriate if we allow them to put a second story on this house, that's fine with me. Where my concern is the 35% of this lot being covered. They're already taller than us, it's already sloped down in my yard. We had problems with the previous builder in my neighbor's house and my yard with runoff of dirt and silt. That I just mitigated, just got rid of it. And now we're gonna build another house similar to that one. You can already not see mine in that picture. So it's gonna tower over my two-story detached. I'm gonna have to deal with the same problems with water and runoff and the silt. I understand construction causes noise, that it is what it is. I can't just live there. My concern with the rest of this is the 35% land coverage. The fact that if you drive down Owen Sound, that semi-detached sticks out like a sore thumb. It does not fit the demographic, the area at all. None of those other houses look like that one. So to say that there are other semis in the area that we can build to look like it, yeah, there's one, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, and now it's gonna be two to stick out like a sore thumb. Save this type of building for your open lots, stuff on the outside of town where we're building these types of structures already. And save the inbound where we live in the old lots, and save that for the houses that are already there. The whole reason I picked this subdivision when I moved to Shelburne 7 years ago was for that lot style. If I wanted to live on Cook Crescent, if I wanted to live over behind McDonald's, that was the houses I would pick. I purposely moved where I am to avoid that area, so I have a lot. So I can play outside, so I can see the trees on Owen Sound Street across from the other picture from my yard. I'm very passionate about this and I can go on forever. I have a lot of concerns with this build. I'll leave it at that for now, and I will like to ask more questions later. Once some of that is answered.
Any other public questions? I can't see everybody around the corner.
I just wanna add a comment, I'm Miranda from 650 Eagle as well, I just wanna know kind of. If this does go through, what are they gonna do, cause right now, even with the current semi that was built. Not even being directly behind it, I feel like privacy, I feel like we are on display, like they're looking right into my house all the time, and I don't even have big windows to like let them look in, and I already feel invaded. So, like, is there gonna be something, or are they planting things, can they put up mature trees along the property line at the back to like create that privacy barrier, like. Anything like that, really concerned me too.
Yeah.
Just to add.
Steve, is there anything you want to add to that for?
Maybe I'll try to address a couple of things there, so, with respect to silt and runoff from a site under construction, definitely, give the town a call if those issues are observed, because, there is supposed to be some silt fencing and screening to make sure that there is a sediment being transported, downslope or to other properties and making a mess. And the owners, responsible during the development to keep that on the property. This is maybe gonna satisfy everybody's concerns, but my general, sense of the way things work with back-to-back lots is that when you have two-story development, you usually have some views of the neighborhood. The rear yards behind you, the lots beside you. Unless those individuals or you yourself take some initiative to plant cedars or do something to screen it to the extent possible. I guess I don't really see it as subject matter for the consent, because as we pointed out at the beginning, if you put a second story on this house, you could build with 35% coverage, you could achieve the same building envelope without having any meetings here tonight, so. We only take a building per application, and that would be something that's permitted by the zoning. There's only so much we can dictate and control through a severance application.
Anybody from the applicants want to address any of the concerns?
Sorry, good evening, I just was hearing all the comments, just to address a few things.
Sure.
Okay,
can I just have your name?
my name is Gilpreet Singh from RD Designs.
Okay.
In regards to the site servicing and grading, we obviously are gonna have a server take a look at the property and do a grading plan, which we are gonna be speaking with the planning department and building department, getting those approved before we even start construction. The server is gonna be more, the grading, we're gonna account for all that before we even start building. We were not the applicants for 612, that was a totally different application. And I don't wanna comment on 612 and understand how it looks compared to other houses. As a designer, we're not looking to build something like 612, where the whole garage and front wall goes straight up and it's coming really close to the front of the road. We're looking to create something that looks a little bit cleaner than that, right? And we're implementing that in our designs already, right? In terms of the two-story buildings are already allowed on there, semi-detached already allowed on there. So whether or not even today, regardless of the application, we could have actually applied for a building permit application with 35% lot coverage and a two-story, not needing this meeting even, right? And built that. In terms of window placements and stuff, obviously, like Steve said, Steve, thank you for doing half my job. But like Steve said, windows, we do require them for all the bedrooms and stuff. And honestly, if there was less windows, the house wouldn't look good either. So, And another point regarding siding, vinyl siding, we are not proposing vinyl siding in front of the house. We are also looking to brick to match the facade around the neighborhood. We don't want to put something that isn't gonna be good, because at the same point, this is something that our clients are looking to invest money into, and, you know, they don't wanna build something that's ugly, that they can't make money out of or sell in the future or anything and lose money out of, let's say, for example, or they regret making and spending so much money into, right? So we wouldn't do that ourselves, right? And in terms of privacy, obviously, there's realistically, like, there's nothing really, matter of fact, is a two-story building can be built there, right? And I understand the idea of privacy, but like he was saying, like, sorry, you were saying, Lindsay, whereas in terms of the, like, it's a town, right? Like, it's part of a subdivision, right? Where it's not massive lots where you are very far away from your neighbor. At the end of the day, we are trying to maintain a 2.44 meter setback from the property line, which is actually greater than what we have right now. So we're farther away from the side yard than we currently are. We're bringing it we're going a little bit longer towards the back and the front rather than wider. So that would actually help in terms of staying closer to the middle portion, which actually helps with the privacy, if anything. But we, like, at the end of the day, there are gonna be windows and, you know, there's nothing that can be done for that, but that's part of any subdivision.
Mr. McLaughlin, did you wanna ask something to follow up?
First thing I want to point out is that our DA designs mentioned was that the investors won't be living in the property. So that's pretty significant for me. These people don't have to live here. They don't have to put up with living there. They're in their mansion somewhere else. They're able to invest. I'm just a little guy, I get it. And at the end of the day, the town's looking for more money, so yeah, sever the lot, put another house in. Nobody in this room has to live next to this house. By bumping that lot back further, you're getting closer to my house. Now you're up taller than me, you already can't see my house. The problems that we had with 612, I believe it was, with the runoff, the contractor was pumping water from their basement into the easement. I just put up a fence before the previous owner moved out, and it cost me $4,000 during COVID. That price, I would assume that would be doubled. I don't want my fence touched. I also have a concern with saying that, great, the front of the house is gonna look nice, so it fits in with the rest of the community. What about the backyard? What about the rest of the house? It doesn't fit into this community. I get it. We're able to put planning through. We can sever the lot. I can go and build a palace in my backyard. That's great. But if I wanted to live next to any one of these structures or live in a structure like this, I would go do that. Unfortunately, the town is gonna put this through and everybody's gonna get a better paycheck because of the taxes, and there's nothing I can do other than sit here and talk.
Okay. Do you have something else?
I'll make a few comments, and I'll try to comment a little bit back to the last comments we got. I live in a section of town where they were all fairly up-structured homes. I bought the lot on purpose to live on that street. In the 20 years that I've lived there, it's all been single families, no rentals, no nothing. In the last 3 to 4 years, 2 of the houses have been bought up. 2 of them are now rentals. There are 4 families living in them. Nothing I can do about it. That's the way the province dictated it. That's the way the province is dictating this. The province dictates what we do. We have so much we can do, and then we can't do anymore. We can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, waste your money, taxpayer money, and they'll just tell us, sorry, we're gonna do what the province wants. The province wants intensification. And this is part of what they're dictating. And you're lucky that Mr. Ford hasn't said quadplexes yet. Because that's something that Mr. Drew wants. And that, if it does come through and Mr. Ford gives in, we'll be seeing those in our area soon.
And it could still happen, because this 70 could put a basement apartment in, and it would be more.
Not a quad in the sense of what's on Lady Sarah Ford.
Well, no, of course, but it can
And
still
quads
be
can,
4
will
units.
eventually be something that will be coming in
Yeah.
and be forced on municipalities, and we'll have no choice again. And they'll go into intensification areas.
Right.
So there's things that we don't have a choice in. I know we choose to live where we like to live, but unfortunately, progress and the big guys up top of us tell us what to do. Second thing, I would like to ask the developers or RDA. Is there no reason why a silt fence can't be put in the back to protect the properties around, make sure that no mud, no anything gets into their properties?
Well, so we can speak with the plant department and city staff to see, and our surveyor who's gonna be doing the lot grading, we don't.
I'm hard of hearing, so you're not talking really loud because I'm a little older guy, you know, and
Yeah, sorry, I said, we can speak to the planning staff and the building department and our surveyor, who's gonna be taking care of the lot grading. And see what solutions we can come up with in regards to that in particular. I won't be able to comment too much about lot grading itself right now because we don't, our design firm is strictly architectural. The surveyor takes care of the lot grading and the servicing connections.
I understand all that. What I'm saying is a silt fence to prevent mud from going on the back properties or the side properties. It's something you see quite often, the black stuff that you see put around. If he's got a fence that's fairly new, he wants to keep it protected, you can easily put something like a silt thing across it, make sure that the mud does not go into his property and make sure that his fence is protected. That's all I'm asking. Is it not possible to do something of that nature there? Work with your neighbors, speak with them
Yes.
and make sure that, you know, at least some of their investments are protected.
Sorry, Nitesh Kumar Gupta, I'm the owner of 616 Owensville. So definitely this is the first time we're hearing about it. Any recommendations that come from the planning department or the city itself to address some of these concerns, we definitely take it into account and make sure that they're followed through.
Okay,
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on silt fence, but if that's what solves the problem, to make sure that they don't get it, that's something that we would definitely look at and explore, yes.
Was that done before though? Was that done?
We were not affiliated with 612 at all.
Oh.
So I hear a lot of concern about 612, and I feel like we're getting the afterburn of that, but I just wanna
No, well,
clarify that we're
because
not.
Clearly, he mentioned
Yes.
that there was tons of silt and
Yes.
everything in his backyard, and I don't know about
Okay.
if that would make me mad, so.
Yep,
I just worry that it's a measure, but I don't know the percentage of how well it works, so. I mean, I guess you're gonna see something, but you gotta mitigate. what you see.
Knowing that that was an issue the last time, I mean,
Yeah.
that's something I guess that our engineers can maybe be even more highly attuned to
Yeah.
when they're looking at this.
yeah, it's used to protect the creeks and whatnot and waterways. So
Yeah, I just don't think
very
it's 100%, but.
Yeah, it works fairly highly effective, and I think that that's something that should be taken into consideration to protect their properties, and especially a fairly new fence is fairly expensive, unless you feel like replacing it. for them.
no, okay, Manny,
And so what if it didn't pass? What is the procedure if we voted no? What, just so that the homeowners can can understand that there are certain areas where we may actually have our hands tied, but I want them to understand that it's not that the town is just like, yeah, we want some extra money. We need to know sort of the process. If we say no today, what happens, just so they understand.
Great question. So, once a decision has been made, we have 15 days to give notice, to anyone who requested to be notified, to the applicant and to the agencies that were given notice at the outset. And, on the date of that notice, it triggers the start of a 20-day appeal period. And, that 20 days is open for the applicant to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, to challenge committee's decision at that tribunal. And then from there, a record has to be filed by the town with the tribunal, including all the information that was presented to the committee and all the public comments. And the applicant has the opportunity to bring forward experts and lawyers and so forth to challenge,
Our decision.
committees.
Yeah. And so then that would then trigger some form of taxpayers' dollars going into fighting sort of our side of our decision, even though unfortunately, they meet the requirements, so it's likely they would win.
All of the policies from the provincial level through the county to the town are overwhelmingly in support of intensification because they have to be, that's a provincial requirement. And this is a form of intensification that is general in my view, because we're going from 1 unit to 2 units. And so in many communities on the main road like this, we're seeing more drastic intensification. Townhomes, stacked townhomes, apartment buildings. So we are trying to be sensitive and limiting to similar dwelling types in the same area. Single and semis are pretty common in the same subdivisions together. More so now, obviously, than they were when these original homes were built, but we do have a mix of single and two-story together. So it would be a very hard refusal to defend that deal to use the bottom line.
The bottom line is we lose,
Yeah.
the bottom line, because that's happened to us already in the past, we've tried it and we've lost.
Steve can't say that.
No, but I can't, because I was on council when we lost the last time we tried to appeal.
Can I ask a quick question? And this is to the designer, developers, investors. Is it your intent to build these units and liquidate them both on the market, or is it your intent to retain these units and turn them into rentals?
No, our intent is to sell them, to hopefully have a little bit more affordable housing.
Okay, so it won't be a rental.
It will not be a rental.
Okay.
Okay, one more question or comment from Mr. McLaughlin, and then we'll wrap this up.
I think we've been in the ground that this is gonna happen, but does it need to cover 35% of their lot? Does it need to be so big? If we're gonna approve it as a semi, does it need to be that massive? Go ahead and put a semi on it. You're gonna do it anyways. Our hands are tied. Does it need to be so big? Does it need to be 35% land coverage? Like, does it need to come in the back that far?
Sorry, just to address that point, in terms of again, today's meeting was really regarding the severance, but in terms of the 35% lot coverages and everything. That we actually aren't really applying for a minor variance or anything, we are meeting zoning bylaws for those requirements. So we don't pass anything that the city already the township already allows. In regards to the building height, everything, we already accounted for those. So we are not really applying for any minor variance for any need to do for this application. Today's application is really just regarding the severance of the lot, and 35% already meet the town's bylaws that are set in place. So we don't exceed any of those requirements.
Just by way of a little bit of context, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes when we see these sorts of applications, that they're accompanied by a zoning application as well to do, create a variance. And oftentimes it has to do with lot coverage or minimum setbacks. And as Steve said, as the applicant just said, in this case, what they're proposing fits the zoning as it currently stands. So to kind of follow Member Donato's earlier comments, there's a few constraints that I think this committee is facing. I think probably all of us without exception are sympathetic to what you're saying. And if we were living where you're living, we probably would share some of the same concerns. The problem is this committee, in rendering its decision, can't be guided by sympathy. Unfortunately, we have to be guided by planning principles, and there are a couple of planning principles that are before us. One is the provincial policy, the other are our own planning policies. And whether we like it or not, this proposal meets all of the requirements under both provincial and local planning policy. So quite frankly, as I see it, this checks all the boxes, whether neighbors like it, whether they feel it's a good fit or not. From a planning perspective, in terms of the policy that's in place, this fits. And because of that, you know, whether I love the idea or not, I personally am gonna support it because I don't see any reason that I can't support it from a planning perspective, so. So with that, as is the case in any of these applications, the committee has three options. We approve it, we defer it, or we refuse it. Anybody who would like to make a motion?
I don't know, should we defer it until we have more members? And then, you know, because we're missing 3 members that. I don't know. I hate lot splitting,
Well,
I think we're just gonna go through the same process for 2 members who weren't here, honestly, and it's just gonna prolong the same decision.
I tend to agree. So.
And I think, I agree with the mayor. It fits all of the provincial obligations that we have to meet because of what they forced on us. It meets the county. It meets, like you said, checks all the boxes. There's nothing we can do to stop it.
I don't have to like it, because.
I don't like it either.
Because I really,
I don't like big lots being split up. I
Me
don't
either.
like older homes being,
Torn
you
down.
know, destroyed or done in. I don't like any of it.
I don't like people being disrupted because of that either.
No, I don't like any of it, but there's nothing we can do to stop it. That's just the way life is, unfortunately, at this time in this way, and as long as people come in, and homes are what people have to have, and because of the fact that, you know, immigration is gonna continue and more homes are gonna be required, and everybody has to live somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to support the decision, and I'll make the motion to carry it forward, or move it. Second. Come on,
I'll second it.
Like, well, he's gonna have to second it.
Okay, so the motion moved by Donato, seconded by Mills, reads as follows. After considering the application, the committee is satisfied with allowing this consent for the purpose of separating 355 square meters of land from the original 711 square meters of lot area. Committee, having regard to those matters under subsection 51, subsection 44 of the Planning Act as amended, resolves to grant provisional consent subject to the following conditions being fulfilled. Number 1, Secretary Treasurer's certificate under subsection 5342 of the Planning Act as amended shall be issued and the Secretary Treasurer's fee be paid. Number 2, the payment of cash into the parkland at the rate of 5% of the value of the newly created lot. Number 3, that the owner enter into an agreement with the town addressing the following matters. A, site servicing and drainage requirements and the details of all servicing connections, modifications and improvements to existing services, including sanitary sewers, water supply, storm sewers, roads, sidewalks, hydrants, utilities, and any required easements deemed necessary by the town in accordance with the town's standards and to the satisfaction of the town's director of development and operations and the town's engineer. B, municipal approval and building permit be obtained for the demolition of the existing dwelling and payment be made for the associated fees. C, the requirement to construct a new mutual driveway and required parking spaces on the severed lot and retained lot. D, the requirement to provide drawings indicating the location and details of the driveway, including the requirement for replacement of any trees requiring removal to the satisfaction of the town. E, design guidelines for the new dwelling to be constructed on the severed lot. And F, the payment of required fees. Number 4, the Secretary Treasurer is provided with a solicitor's undertaking to maintain and register the existing easements for the sanitary sewer and the utilities where required on title of the severed lot and retained lot. Number 5, that approval of the draft reference plan as applicable should be obtained at the Committee of Adjustment Office, which is the Town of Shelburne office, and the required number of prints, which is 3, of the resultant deposited reference plan should be received. And finally, 6, that the conditions are to be fulfilled and the consent is to be finalized on or before 2 years from the date of the issuance of the committee's notice of decision. So that is the motion, moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is defeated. Okay. So back to square one. We can't leave it unresolved. So do we defer it or defeat it? Over to you two.
I'd say defer until there's more members.
Okay. Councilor Shardy, are you seconding that?
I will second that.
Okay, so that motion then reads, after considering the application, having regard to those matters under subsection 51-24 of the Planning Act as amended, the committee resolves to defer provisional consent. All in favor? I'll break that tie, so we go to another defeated motion, that's carried. Okay, so the matter is deferred, so Steve, I guess you will come back. May 13th meeting, I think we will have as far as I know, a full complement of committee members that night. Right, okay, so that is the first application. Steve, the second application.
Second application is related to 250 Main Street East, PE 2402. And I just want to be a bit quicker, because of the previous consent rezoning, this, the chair mentioned at the beginning, that we both approved previously. So if you pick slides, if you're familiar with the location, northwest corner of James Street and Main Street East is an existing older home on the property, which is being maintained. And that's the retained lot of the previous application. Where you see, you know, the white vehicle and a couple of mounds of earth just to the north. On this slide, that's where there's a new home under construction. That's on the severed lot. If the owner is currently building that for themselves. And because they kept both lots in the same name, ownership wise, and intend to live in the new dwelling, the way they had structured their previous application prevents them from selling the original house. So a bit of a misstep there, and some changes to the planning act that have occurred that now allow the committee to grant a consent certificate for one or both of the lots that are subject, whereas before those changes, only the severed lot could be granted a consent certificate. So it was simpler for this owner to come back to the committee and request another certificate than to change the ownership name of the new severed lot, because of mortgage and other purposes. And so they made that request with this application. And won't get into the neighborhood context too much, but the next slide just shows the location in an existing kind of mixed area, former hospital, which has been converted to residential to the northeast. Some multi-unit dwellings to the, and commercial to the northwest. Generally single detached units along Main Street. And there was a full assessment of the merits of the application, as well as the design of the new dwelling and other considerations, servicing and otherwise, as part of the original application. Just to be clear, this application does not result in the creation of any new lots. It doesn't change any of the servicing situations. It doesn't change the grading or parking or anything like that. It's really for legal and technical reasons. The original severance sketch provided with the 2022 applications shown here, and you can see outlined in the black line is the new dwelling that is now in construction, parking off of the laneway at the back. Parking for the existing home facing Main Street is behind the dwelling in the new driveway there. And as I mentioned, the owner just wants to be able to sell that existing dwelling first before any changes in ownership are made to the severed lot, which he intends to retain. So just two simple conditions for this one. To permit staff to issue a certificate for the conveyance of the retained lot, so the existing house on its own lot without changing the ownership of the severed lot. And that condition would be required to be cleared within 2 years. To my knowledge, there were no public comments on this application. And of course, we're here to receive the committee's comments and any comments from the public tonight.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Any questions or comments from the committee? Any public comments or questions? Don't anticipate there are. It really is just how it needs, as Steve said. Okay, so same as the last one, approve, defer, or refuse. Anybody to approve? Okay, thank you. Seconder for that?
Sure.
Mr. Wagner. Okay. So the motion on this one will read as follows. After considering the application, the committee is satisfied with allowing this consent to permit the issuance of a certificate under the conveyance of the retained land from a previous consent, which was under file B22/01. The committee, having regard to those matters under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act as amended, resolves to grant provisional consent subject to the following conditions being fulfilled. Number one, that the Secretary Treasurer's certificate under subsection 5342 of the Planning Act as amended shall be issued and the Secretary Treasurer's fee paid. And number two, the conditions are to be fulfilled and the consent is to be finalized on or before 2 years from the date of the issuance of the committee's notice of decision. All in favor? It's carried. Okay. All right. Anything else, Steve?
So, anything further? Anything on the agenda?
Think we're good? Okay, thank you very much. Can I just have a motion then to adjourn the committee of adjustment meeting? By Charity, seconded by. All in favor? It's carried. All right, so we will flip over to our regular council agenda. You have to do anything technically, perhaps just give staff a second to switch gears. Thank you. I'll take a drive home. Right, so we'll call our regular council meeting to order at 7:28. As I mentioned at the outset, we are missing 3 members tonight, but we do still have 4 members, so we do have a quorum. One additional housekeeping item, the in-camera session, which was identified as number 9 on the agenda, is going to be deferred until the May 13th meeting, so that will just come off tonight's agenda, but everything else will remain intact. So with that, I would just ask that everybody who's here, if you're able to stand and join us in playing for National Anthem. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. And it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous people with this land, its waterways, and resources. The standard reminder to members to declare any pecuniary interest that they may have with respect to any agenda item tonight. I don't think there's anything, but if something arises through the agenda, please declare at that time. Minutes from our April 8th council meeting. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve those minutes as presented and circulated? Moved by Councilor Wagner, seconded by Councilor Donato.
Well, there's only.
Are there any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, all in favor? It's carried. Public question periods. Any questions? Anybody? No, okay. Nothing was submitted. Excellent, okay. So we do have a presentation and a couple of proclamations this evening. Our first presentation is from the Shelburne Soccer Club regarding a field development project proposal. So I would welcome the representatives from the Shelburne Soccer Club. We only have the one chair there. If you want to pull another chair up to the table, feel free. If you'd rather stay there, that's fine too, wherever you want.
I'll move up.
Okay. Okay. Tag one in.
Yeah, we'll like.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Junior. I'm here with Kyle and Bart. We're volunteer members of the Shelburne Soccer Club, and we're here representing today the Shelburne Board and also the community. Recognizing the increasing demand, go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Recognizing the increasing demand for soccer facilities in Shelburne, the Shelburne Soccer Club proposes a comprehensive development plan for Greenwood Park. Shelburne is a growing and fast community, and with that brings us challenges with registration for soccer. Every year, our registration is full, and we have limitations where we can't take all the kids into soccer because we order uniforms, and we have also issues with fields and teams and all that stuff. So that's the challenge that we have right now. Also, with kids that are registering and we have to close registration off, we have issues with parents and families leaving once, twice, even 3 times a week to go to neighboring clubs to have kids play there, which we want kids to stay in Shelburne and have soccer here. This is where we want them to play, this is where we live, and this is our community. Enhancing soccer fields, promoting safety, and also providing sporting, not just for soccer, but for other sports, as baseball is big in Shelburne as well. Field development is very important to us. Expansion of soccer fields. Develop additional soccer fields within Greenwood Park to meet increasing demands. So in the Parks and Recs plan, it's already been identified. So this is good. This is what we want to see. The only thing is that we don't know when these fields are going to be developed. This was needed a long time ago. For example, when I first moved here, we had mini fields over by the helicopter pad, and we had 3 mini fields there. And now we've grown so much that we've had to move those mini fields over to Thunder Field, where now we have 6 fields, and that is being filled now with U6 and under. The challenges that we have with that is when our house league is playing, we now have people traveling from out of town to come to the field, and there's cars, people, high volume. I don't know if anyone has been there, but it's very high volume. And then we have to clear those mini nets and clear the younger kids off to make way for our travel team. So that's also causing some challenges as well. Okay, next slide. So with our, so 2021 and 2024 registration and survey. So since 2021, we have noticed a jump in registration. In 2022, registration was up 25%. 2023, registration was up 40%. And in 2024, we're expected now to reach around 7%. We're gonna go up. So we already have over 300 kids registered, and we're also going to do another in-person registration. And then we're going to target the new areas, the 3 new developments that we have. So we're expected now to go way over, and again, once again, this year, we're gonna have to turn away kids because we don't have the fields to have the players for the fields. We also sent out a field safety survey, and it came back at around 50% of our residents saying that they don't feel safe playing on our fields because of the surface, which I will get into next. But we're trying to get this at 0. We don't want anyone feeling unsafe. We want everyone to feel safe. We want everyone to be happy with the fields that we have here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kyle.
So this is my first year as a member of the Shelburne Soccer Board, and I've previously been a volunteer coach in the house league team. So I have 2 children who are 4, or 5 and 7. And so I've had an intimate experience of utilizing the fields at Greenwood. As you can see, this is a photo from mid-season, where the grass is full quality, it's divoted. We could all go take a quick walk along Greenwood Field and recognize that the playing surface is not level. And again, I'm a social worker, I won't claim to know how these things are constructed, but it just seems that in terms of long-term sustainability of that field being built up on a mound, raising up, it's created some stability issues. You can see peaks and valleys throughout. When we're talking about our house league kids and we're looking at skill development, we're doing it on an uneven surface. And it's not to say that it's an insurmountable task for us to do skill development, but again, we're seeing kids trip, we're seeing kids fall. It's becoming a barrier to their development within soccer. When we're moving into our travel teams, where we have an expectation of excellence in providing a service that is, comparable to what we're seeing in other communities, we're hearing feedback from other rec clubs who are coming to our town, and they're stating that this is the worst field in the league. They don't even want to come on, they don't even want us to be a part of their loop because they step onto our field. It's not level. The grass is of high quality, and it's really, not only is it impacting our town and the perception of our town, but again, we're not providing a surface that's conducive to kids developing skills that would allow them to participate in higher levels of sports. As Junior alluded to, our registrations continue to expand. We're still going to utilize the field as it's one of our central locations. Greenwood, as we know, is a hub of our community. And so it's conducive to us now as everybody can have access to it. But as we continue to utilize the field, if we don't have a major investment into that area, we can assume that it's likely to continue to deteriorate. And especially with higher usage, more kids coming onto the field. And so I know that the town's recently announced and told us that they are undergoing maintenance, they are reseeding, things like that. And while that's a great step and really important for this season, in terms of long-term sustainability, whether it's resurfacing, re-leveling, supporting the field so that it can be used for generations would be a great place to start. And then looking even within the Parks and Rec master plan, if there's a possibility to amend it, to look at how we could look at moving to a field like an AstroTurf field, which again, yes, there would be additional startup costs and investment into that field, but the ongoing maintenance, reseeding, the ongoing maintenance would be drastically reduced by making that initial upfront investment. And so I think that's one of the pieces that as a soccer club, we're hopeful that could be incorporated into the Parks and Rec master plan. We're not asking for a Ashland field by this season. That would be, we'd probably get laughed at here, probably wouldn't even get adopted, but.
You don't want it by next week?
Yeah, I know you moved down. So, we're hopeful that, if that could happen, great. We have 5 other kids for you that would be really happy to have that. But we understand that these things take, whether it's fund procurement, planning and budget, we understand that. And so I think we come here first to say, it would be great if, the seeding and leveling the field could be something that's looked at in the near term, but then looking at we were providing our registration numbers to show this is growing. A number of you are probably aware of the massive expansion that's gonna be happening in this area. And so we need to have an area that's conducive to support recreational opportunities in this town. And we think that focusing on Greenwood is a really great place to start as a hub of our community. We already have, I mean, if you go by there, once we start our season, that's gonna be one of the happiest places in Shelburne. Every weeknight from 5:30 to 8 o'clock, you're gonna see families engaging, connecting. And right now, we have an area, but could it be better? Absolutely. And if we can make it a priority of this town, we could have something that, potentially could be really beneficial, not just for Shelburne, but for Dufferin as a county as a whole. So that's my piece. We can go to the next slide. Bart, do you want me to keep going on this one or?
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on Kyle's long-term plans is with the population increasing in Shelburne and the demand for soccer increasing in Shelburne. Kind of increasing our time slots, we're getting more, every year we're getting more travel teams playing. We're getting more registrations. It'd be nice that we could play a little bit later, maybe during the week. We can't do that right now at Thunder Field, but it'd be nice if we had two fields operating at one time. So, putting it into kind of like the long-term pipeline of the Parks and Rec plan is considering putting lights at Brighams. To again, kind of alleviate the pressure off of Thunder, especially for the growing rec clubs.
Next week.
Next week, yes. I think just further to that, we've seen our registration grow within our younger members. We're hopeful that we're providing a high quality club, that we're gonna see our house numbers into older divisions continue to grow. Right now, we're fielding about four U17 teams. And so as we have a really strong base right now in our younger generations, but as they continue to grow and to get older within our club, there is gonna come a point that right now we have one evening field that can be illuminated. And so if we're hopeful, and I think we're all optimistic that we're gonna keep kids engaged in soccer, keep them engaged in town, but there may come a point where having one evening field isn't going to cut it. And while that's okay mid-season when the lights out, the sun's out till later, it's fantastic. But as we get into the closer end, like the start and the end of the seasons, we need those we eventually will need those two playing services.
And just to add, the registration is growing, but the fields and where we play soccer isn't. So this is where we're asking for the fields now to catch up to the players that we have, so that we don't have to turn away anyone and everyone can stay here in town.
And then another thing that we would love, I guess, in the long-term pipeline, potentially look into a seasonal sporting dome being put on to either Brighams or Thunder Field. So that, we live in Canada, we have winter, our kids are right now playing in gymnasiums, which isn't exactly ideal with the amount of participation and registration that we're getting for our winter programs. And this could be something that can not only be used for soccer, but can be used for cricket, for indoor baseball, for volleyball, for so many different sporting activities. And it can be a source of income for the town as well, with all the exactly, yeah.
That one might be a couple of weeks off.
Three weeks would be I'm totally fine.
That's something we wanna put in your ear.
Yeah, no,
I was gonna say, the dome is amazing, but I don't think it can be put over grass, right? It needs to be over artificial.
Yeah.
100% be good.
Can?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thought it
think
would be over artificial.
The cost associated with maintaining a dome over a grass field would be more.
Right.
We think that, I think as a club, we would recommend, the first step would be the AstroTurf field.
Right.
And then that really enables moving to an enclosed space because you don't have those concerns about climate control, pieces like that.
Watering and stuff,
Watering and all of that.
fertilizing and.
And so, and again, I think what we're coming to today is to ask council to open a conversation about what we can do in this area. We understand that timelines are gonna be dynamic and there's gonna be a number of things that are gonna influence it, but we as a club are hearing concerns from not only our families, but from folks that are coming to our town and utilizing our field. And so, you know, we think it's prudent that we start this discussion here now.
And I appreciate that, you know, all kidding aside, you know, oftentimes we do get presentations or proposals and, you know, unfortunately, some people don't, I think sometimes don't even understand that, you know, yeah, the ideas are great, but the realities of time, money and resources are things that we all have to deal with. But in terms of opening a conversation and, you know, having these ideas out there, I think is all good stuff. From my perspective as a member of a fairly new soccer family in town, I mean, I can speak firsthand to the level of dedication and passion that all of you guys bring. You know, those of you that are in the room here tonight, but I know there's several others who aren't here. And you do run like a fantastic program.
Yeah.
So, you know, kudos to all of you and you know, yeah, if there are things that we can do over a period of time to kind of support the passion and dedication that you guys are bringing kind of as programming, then, you know, I'm certainly in favor of looking at that. So we obviously aren't going to make any promises or solve any problems.
We can solve all
tonight, but
solve
you know, well, sure. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some internal things I think that we can do. So.
To give you a history of Thunder Field. Because originally, that was in Hemo. Down that sand underneath there, that's why those holes come about with the rain and whatnot. At one point in time, the grass was being looked after because the grass did come up, the whole turf did come up from Hemo Field, and it was being looked after and weeded and whatnot. What's happened since the company that originally was looking after it, till now, I can't answer for. I will leave that to staff to help out with that. But there's no reason that if I'm looking at our director of operations, that we cannot fix that field, knowing that there's sand underneath it. That we can make sure that it's level, that the grass is of some reasonable quality, good quality actually. Okay, and the same thing with Brigham Field, making sure that it's level and that it's, because when I coached soccer. And I had my under 17s playing on the field, the last thing I wanted to do was take them home to their parents with a broken ankle. I did not want to face that parent. Okay, and I don't think any of the people on the soccer board want to face the parents afterwards either, nor do they want their insurance being handled because of that. So we can do that right now, making sure it's done. I'll let you answer, Jim. Then the other thing I wanted to mention, the other parking lot at Brigham Field. Why don't we get that at least cleaned up, weeds or whatever the heck is growing in there? Get some decent gravel in there so people can park there and they can get on to Brigham Field from that and take some of the pressure off of Thunder Field parking lot, the Greenwood parking lot. On Greenwood Street.
Yeah.
There's no reason we can't put gravel, get a grader in there, bulldozer, I don't care what you have to get in there, straighten that section up. That is something we can do as well this year and get parking over there. I'm sure we've got to have a few dollars somewhere.
Through your worship, with the parking area off Bansley, that is included in our Parks Master Plan for 2025 to start looking at that.
Can we bring it up a little sooner?
That's what we have it budgeted for right now.
Carrie's saying, if you wanna pay for it, Walter.
No, I'm not paying for it. I had a couple over the years. Is it possible?
It would mean substituting a 2024 project.
Is there a project that can sort of be substituted for?
No.
I mean, in fairness, I don't think it's fair to ask staff tonight to come up with an answer on the spot.
I know.
But, yeah.
So through when the master plan was supported in principle to guide us over the next 5 to 10 years on a capital approach, we included what projects would be funded predominantly from development charity fuel reserves. And those were prescriptive so that those projects could systematically move forward. Significant money is going into a number of parks with respect to playgrounds. There's significant money planned for Fiddle Park. So if we adjust what the project schedule is, and we've already started creating RFPs and documents for those issuances in 2024 for work either fall 2024 or spring, summer 2025, the entire plan is impacted. So granted, I certainly appreciate how important soccer is, and I also have a strong understanding of point of access and how affordable it is for many, and your participation rates are, congratulations. At the same time, however, we had identified in the Parks Recreation Master Plan, there was no dome and there was no AstroTurf. Those are multi-million-dollar endeavors, in maintenance. So we certainly can go back for council and advise them of the costs associated with that. And we have maxed out our DCs. So, and again, we usually ask for when investments are being made, that are there contributing partners from the community that are willing to invest and create targets to help offset those capital plans if they're being amended. I'll also, before Jim does, just take the opportunity to note that you are correct. There has been an adjustment with respect to the field quality. There's a number of issues that have actually impacted that. Pesticides and their total removal of what can be used has had a bearing on that. That said, we also had council support us through our operations review and investing in staff resources, knowing that we need, and this was in our ops review, to create standards for turf maintenance, which in a small community like this, there was never the delineation of maybe operations and field maintenance. And we now have members of our staff that I think are more credentialed in terms of helping us lead that. So you're going to see a better and a more intensified sport turf management program with standards. So if you let us just demonstrate that this summer, that's going to be implemented. And we also know that there's no love of dandelions for sport, and they create slippage, but the reality is that is an impact of pesticides being removed. So we'll work with all of that, but everything you have on your list, staff will be going back and advising council on how does that fit with the existing Parks Recreation Master Plan? How does it not? And how are the cost implications of that from a capital perspective as well as an operating going to change what this Parks and Recreation Master Plan has already provided us as a guidance tool? Because, I mean, the last time I looked, domes anywhere depending on the character of them, and we would want AstroTurf under it, can be from $2 to $9 million. And the operating costs, and I just for the record want to and I appreciate that there will be some revenues that are generated from field use. This realm of recreation is highly subsidized. So the more utilization and capital, the higher the taxpayer subsidy. And what we would want to actually work with you on is a thorough understanding of how many of your participants reside and live in Shelburne and how many are deemed non-resident, because that really has a critical impact for council understanding the taxpayer investment long-term to support not only the capital, but the operating. That said, soccer was identified as a really critical sport for community. It was identified as being something that fulfills this continuum of access, participation, and equity. So we know that. It's just the big question is truly the affordability. So hopefully we can get you quality of field that you're happy with this year. You won't be getting a dome next week. You said 3. Oh, yeah. I'll be clear of bad news. Yeah. And then if we actually look at that, we want to work with you with a funding commitment on strategy, similar to let's just use the splash pad. Yeah. That was a $750,000 endeavor, where the Rotary committed 300, and they continue to support that project with different amenities now being supported. The town's commitment was $450. And that was a big project for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think to your point, you guys identified that in the proposal that, when it comes to funding for some of these larger ticket things, I don't think the expectation is coming from your side that the town's going to cover the cost. I mean, this is something to look at potentially look at other funding sources, partnerships.
Absolutely, well, and again, the reason why we don't have any dates on any of the major pieces is because we understand the complexity of moving something forward like that. And even within a 5 and 10 year plan, we understand that some of our requests may fall outside of that. And none of us are here working on the Shelburne Soccer Club just for our own kids. This is about long-term sustainability of a high quality program. I myself have another probably 10 years, I got a 7 and 4-year-old, so I'm in until they say they're out, but again, it's not just about my kids, it really is about our community, ensuring that there is a high quality area where we can be proud that our kids are able to gather.
What I would ask as a board is prioritize your projects as you're going along. Like you mentioned several things within here. And for us to understand, we need to understand your, as you prioritize.
What's most important, right?
What's the
Yeah.
most
What do they
important,
like?
like when you're talking about lighting on everything, is that more important than
Yeah.
saying AstroTurf on,
Yeah.
you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, so.
No, prioritize, you don't have to do it tonight, I'm just saying, when you go back, prioritize what you're looking at. Look at where you get sponsorships or grants for certain projects that, you know, I said. And then the other thing, I think it has to go back to what our CEO said, we also need to understand through, while you're getting a lot of growth, is it 50% town of Shelburne? Is it 40%? Is it 75%? We need to know the percentage as well, because right now, coming to this council, you're asking for the taxpayers of the town of Shelburne. And if it's 50%, then 50% should be coming from the taxpayers of Shelburne. If the other 50% are coming from the surrounding municipalities, maybe it's time for you to go to the other municipalities, councils, and say, oh, by the way, guys, Melanchthon, you got 25% of your people coming in and playing soccer in Shelburne. How about helping with our projects? You know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that, I think, is what the CEO is trying to refer to, knowing the numbers that you have, and helping us also know the numbers that you have.
Yeah, so I think our main concern is mostly not turning away kids.
No, we understand that,
Yes.
and we appreciate that, and I agree with you, I don't wanna turn away any child that wants to play, it's not fair to the child, it's not fair to, you know, do anything.
So.
But if that is the priority you're getting at, and the need for more fields or more whatever, that gets back to what I said. The priorities of what you need, how to make your growth work for you. So that you're not turning away children, you have to come back to us, and again, with numbers, with something behind it to sort of help us understand as well. Okay, does that?
No, absolutely, and our registrar would be able to certainly provide those numbers on a percentage of out of town participants. We are really appreciative to hear that there's been a more dedicated staff member on the operations team to manage maintenance of the field, and so we are hopeful that does improve, and so we're really thankful to hear that. And again, whether it's partnering with Rotary Club on conventions, we're certainly open to exploring those partnerships as a board within Shelburne. And so would we proceed the same manner that we did with this, where we would submit to the clerk for a presentation? Or is there a different channel that we would proceed with certain requests like that?
Yeah, I think at this point, I mean, we don't have to, you know, follow through with formal presentations. I mean, you've opened the door and, you know, circling back to where I started, I think that was kind of the intent of tonight, just to start that conversation. So I think at this point, staff can engage with the club to sort of talk through, you know, what more details and logistics about this.
We could, so if, based on what some of the councillor questions have been, and I just like to know, when you said if you recognize the capital costs associated with this project, it's like, this is probably worth $18 million or more. So as long as you recognize that, that's fantastic, and if you're not aware of those estimated costs per function, we're happy to just give you some ballpark figures based on what's actually happened in the last, like, 18 months, let's say. The next meeting, for example, would be very helpful if you met with staff.
Yeah.
And either we come to your meetings or we create a separate meeting, just to go over this, and it's, as you say, you prioritize. So, I mean, lighting, for example, can be $500,000.
Yeah.
So that we understand what your priorities are, where these things, and the lighting is not part of master plan either. And then also a recognition that there are some other competing interests. Where other users have vision as well for the same spaces. And what we had looked at originally were hybrids. Because trying to accommodate these issues on the limited lands that we have, and if we had more land, fantastic. But we're also looking at potentially losing properties for baseball, when the school decommissioned those at the high school, for example. So we have footprint, but we have limited footprint. So we're happy to work with you to make it accessible. Like we said, it's not gonna be probably as quick as you might like, but I think having a plan that is realistic and that you can create that momentum that is exciting, and we have an understanding, like Councilor Bernardo was at, but we really have to understand where your movers are coming from.
Yeah.
And where that growth is projected from, because unless, we get more land, the reality is you might have to supplement with consecutive or parallel facilities in another community. That may be the reality. I don't want to stamp, but we have no property other than what we have, right? So Greenwood and Fiddle Park are the two largest properties that have been identified for intensified development. One is active sport, the other is more passive. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So we're happy to meet with you. And then if, for example, if any infrastructure funding comes up, then we have a plan for submitting a grant, which is sort of exciting.
I have a question. So on the Parks and Master Plan, Greenwood Park expansion, there's a completion date for that?
There's a number of different ideas for that, which haven't been, for example, ratified. There's vision, but we've also said through that process, there would be engagement and an understanding. So as you had on the one thing, that was a location potentially for cricket. But it was identified as a shared use for soccer cricket. In addition, where you're asking for the parking to be moved up, or Councilor Bernardo, that was washroom and parking. And the reason that we don't want to do it too quickly, at least washrooms, is we don't want to have to impact getting point of access there. So single use is easier, shared use creates other challenges potentially for users in terms of scheduling. But that really is Greenwood, and one of the things we had said in the interim was it would become like a commons area. So that would create capacity for you to would enjoy it. It would also be great for the soccer experience because you have a place to land literally and have a picnic and whatever. If you have $17 million, we can make this happen in 2025. Okay, so anyways, we're happy and excited for you. We'll meet with you and we'll see what comes next.
Right, buy the lottery tickets.
Yeah.
No,
2 million.
And I just, first of all, thank you for your presentation, and I'm really moved by your passion for the sport. It's great. The facilities within, if you had to kind of pick a facility from another community and plop it in here, I'm just wondering if there's any that you had in mind or you're aware of. Sure. I'm thinking Martin. Have you guys been to the Martin Field? Okay, I would invite you to go to that facility. It is a dome facility.
Where's that?
Martin, number 6 and.
Oh, okay.
On the way to Guelph. Now it's completely paid for and sponsored by corporation. It's been there. It's south of Fergus. It's between Fergus and Guelph. I know Cambridge they've just put in 5 outdoor fields, but I mean.
Keep picking the bigger communities.
Well, no, I'm just saying Martin's in the middle of nowhere.
No, I understand that, but if you see Ferguson go off at the growth, like you said, the
Yeah.
corporations that are in there, it's pretty easy to see where money comes from.
Right.
Look around Shelburne and see where the money's coming from.
If you can find, a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola or whatever, or public grants, then that would be amazing. But have in your minds something like I would invite you to go to the Martin Field because it's a multi-use field.
There's nothing around, even Mount Forest, if you go over towards Mount Forest and go down and see their soccer fields, because when I was in soccer, we used to play a lot over towards that, they had 4 or 5 fields within the one area. the Lions had their concession booth in there, which I used to say to myself, darn, why does the Shelburne never have a darn concession booth here on the field so I can buy my coffee while I'm trying to freeze out there and, you know, direct the kids to play. But anyway, those kinds of ideas. So, yeah, other ideas are great. Bring it forward.
Art, you mentioned Stratford. Stratford, I'll find out this summer, but it's an outdoor facility.
It's two outdoor fields, full fields. Completely turf, just exceptional quality, like their bathroom facilities and their playing surface, the fencing around the fields are awesome. The one thing that I did notice in Stratford is the entire fencing around the field is all sponsors. So.
This is, the other thing, because it's the sand asphalt turf on top of sand, not an issue.
No.
No.
I think it's that.
So I think it would be installed in, because we did look into it, and this is why we put it to long term, right? Because we did see that it was expensive, we did see there was grants, also with the lighting, we did look at that as a group. And we did see that was very expensive, so we're not talking about 5 years here, we're talking about 20 years for that. But they would build the AstroTurf, I'm not sure if it's gonna be with sand, but there is drainage. So that way, when it rains, you can play on the AstroTurf and you wouldn't have an issue. So we did look into all that stuff and we maybe didn't put the dates of when it is, but we are aware, like, you guys are aware that we are aware that that it's not tomorrow, we're not talking about tomorrow.
Everything has a price tag.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're just as a club wanna start engaging with the town about how we can move forward with this in a meaningful way, and we're really excited about your receptiveness to what we're speaking about today.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks so much for coming out. Pitching this, because, yeah, I mean, sorry, Jim?
Through your worship, just a couple of points that were brought up there. We did add some additional parking on Greenwood, last year, kind of a 2-tier bonus there as well for soccer as speed reduction. And we do have a line that we're gonna paint up the road to delineate that better, because people are still driving up the parking, spots that we have now. We do have an eco-friendly weed control that we're looking at this year, so that should improve your, dandelion issues we control there. As well as our staff was in, the last couple of weeks, we've had Thunderfield shut down. They've been into topsoil and seed that. Somebody was in, not scheduled, climbed over the fences even though they were locked, played on the field, tore it all up. So we had, I've been literally chasing kids down.
Yeah, we've been for an hour. Yeah, we've been going over there to, and especially.
Field police.
Volunteer security.
So, we did notice that, so staff has been back in again, and Jamie on our staff did contact you guys. Thank you very much for posting that on your websites too, that seems to have helped. So, yeah, our staff's been back in there again. That field is irrigated too, so we can't put heavy equipment on it. So, yeah, it's basically a hand deal, but the guys are back out there, soiling, our staff and seeding again, and once we get it stabilized, then we should be good to go again.
And is there no ability to roll the field because of the irrigation, or is there?
We haven't done it in the past, to my knowledge, just because of the sprinkler heads and everything else. Same with aeration, we don't wanna put the aerators on, put holes in the lines and the heads and everything else, so.
I'll just add, it is a huge benefit to have an irrigated field, it's costly, but it has some restrictions on maintenance, and that's another thing we have to work around. To your point, we have acknowledged and we have to look at other things. It is very frustrating and it's just disrespectful, but it's happening all the time. Where people, even without a fence, are utilizing field and actually jeopardizing the playability of that for others. And we don't know how to get this message across any stronger, but a higher fence may be the only solution.
I was just thinking,
When you install the lighting next week, on the men's side.
But I also think it will help when that Parks and Rec plan comes into play and there is more field there. I think that it will actually help because like even today, there was kids on Bridgens Field practicing. Yeah. And then you went over and you seen kids on Thunder Field. But if there's another field in the area, if one field being used, then you won't have that problem because there's technically in that area only 2 fields.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you all. And yeah, this is the first of what I'm sure will be a number of conversations, but yeah, we have to start somewhere and certainly appreciate you for starting that conversation. So thank you very much for all your time.
Yes, thank you.
So at this point, I'll get a motion to receive the presentation and we'll take it from there. Councillor Wagner, second by Councillor Donato. All in favor? Carried. All right, thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
All right, next up is a proclamation for the National Day of Mourning. Whereas April 28th is the day set aside to honor those workers across the country whose lives have been lost, those who have been injured or disabled on the job, or who suffered from occupational diseases. And whereas the town of Shelburne is committed to establishing and maintaining safe workplace conditions for our workers, and whereas the National Day of Mourning was officially recognized by the federal government in 1991, and originally launched by the Canadian Labour Congress in 1984, together on this day, we strive along with employers and unions across Canada to prevent workplace deaths, illnesses, and injuries. And whereas by recognizing the Day of Mourning, we acknowledge the continuing need to work collectively with our unions and associations to eliminate workplace injury, illness, and death in the workplace. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2024 as the National Day of Mourning in the town of Shelburne. Second proclamation for this evening, and I know that we have a representative here who I will call on after I read it out, is for Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. Whereas multiple sclerosis is a chronic, often disabling neurological disease affecting an estimated 1 in 400 Canadians and approximately 90,000 across the country. And whereas MS symptoms vary widely and may lead to problems with numbness, coordination, vision, and speech, as well as extreme fatigue and even paralysis. And whereas there is no known cure of, prevention of, cause of, prevention of, or cure for MS. And whereas the MS Society of Canada is the only national organization in Canada that supports both MS research and services for people with MS and their families. Annual fundraising events such as the MS Walk, MS Bike, and A&W Canada's Burgers to Beat MS campaign support programs to enhance the lives of people affected by MS and their families and support MS research in Canada. And whereas since 1948, the MS Society of Canada has contributed $200 million towards MS research and is grateful for the dedication and commitment of its supporters and volunteers that has made this possible. And whereas together we will find ways to enhance the quality of lives for people affected by MS and to find a cure to end MS. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as MS Awareness Month in the town of Shelburne. And we are joined by Mr. James Jackson, who is our MS Ambassador for Dufferin County. So I would invite you, sir, if you want to make a few comments.
Thank you. It's easier for me just to stand. Sometimes the sit can be challenging. I wish to actually thank all of you for doing this on behalf of MS Canada, myself, and the people that I represent for Dufferin Canada. MS, to me, the best way I can explain it is they say that the challenges and let me try to say this. The challenges and fights that we face in our lives are what makes us strong. And if that is the case, then I would have to say that people with MS must be Hulks in human form, because I have met some incredibly strong people. This includes my son. My son actually this weekend, he actually said to me that he doesn't like MS for the main fact because it, as I said, it has robbed us of some quality time. Because I can't even throw a baseball with him. He would love to do that with me. And it steals the ability to participate in a lot more functioning things. And it also is debilitates you from doing that simple things of even from like trying to find a job to support a family, right? So then you're under the under the pressure of what can you do and where can you go and everything. For me, I wish to and I want to keep doing my volunteering as the ambassador and stuff to show to other people that you can. You can fight over and become better because it's in our human gene to fight and overcome diversity. But thank you very much for doing this. My heart is full of thank you and so much gratitude. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep it up. Just while you're here, I read a while ago that the MS tends to affect Canadians in a larger proportion than, is it any other country?
It's actually Canada and they don't know why.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, if they determined why that is. Okay, because that surprised me when I read that.
They don't know if is it environment, is it the hemisphere? They don't even know genes. Like nobody in my family has ever had MS, and I'm adopted. And as far as my family, the adopted side and my birth, neither one will have it. So I'm the only one. We are keeping an eye on my son, and we have a 2-year-old now, and the same thing. We'll keep an eye on them. Will it happen? We don't know, because it's the same with my wife. My wife has MS. Nobody in her family has as well. So it's a mystery. It's a very, we don't know if we'll ever find answers to it.
So, well, hopefully more awareness may lead to more funding, and maybe more funding will lead to more answers.
I also find, let me add, sorry, to take a little bit of time. I also find that there's the stigma about it because a lot of people are afraid of it. They're how they will be judged, not only by family, by friends, but also the work. A lot of people who have MS, they can't say anything of the work because they're afraid they'll be fired. I myself was a professional driver. As soon as I was diagnosed with MS, the Ministry of Transportation came along and took away my pay. And as I said to the Ministry of Transportation years ago when I was down on half of Event Canada, I said to him, I went, now, would you go into the doctor's office? Would you go into a lawyer's office or any profession and go in because they have a debilitating disease and take their diploma off the wall? And he's like, no, this is the thing you did to me. Because you've taken away now my ability that you could have put a restriction on my license. I'm not holding it against what they did. I understand what they did, but look at what you've done. And so.
I understand perfectly what he's saying, because when I went to apply for a job, and it was really giant brick, I'll name the company. I went in and the first thing the guy looked at me and said, can you do stairs? I said, yes. Can you walk 200 feet to the back of the building? I said, yes. By the time I had said yes, he had already put the pen down and was no longer looking at me. So I knew I didn't have the job. He had already stigmatized me and didn't give me the job. And that's the thing as you said, you get stigmatized right away because you have some form of a disability. You can't work. And that is not true. There's a lot of people with disabilities that can do a lot of jobs, but are never given that opportunity or the chance. Because people look at them and say, oh, yeah, but disability, you can't do anything. You're no benefit to society anymore. And that's BS.
I used to run, I've been a CEO, I've been a CFO, I've run 3 different companies. I've been head of them by several different companies. So now all of a sudden, you feel as if everything I've done seems to have been for naught. Right? So it's heartbreaking, but I would always try and rise above. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to council inquiries. Are there any inquiries this evening? Councilor Bernard and Councilor Thursday.
A couple of them, actually, then I'd be, Jim, I'm gonna put you back on the spot again. I had to fire everybody for fixing of the lawns because of the street cleaning during the winter time. People have been complaining about the ruts that the machines have caused on the side. Right now with the heavy rains and everything, they've just been ponding. And they're wondering, when are we gonna fix the ruts and when are we gonna put the topsoil, make it look decent again. Second one, the second one is two part. One part, the cleaning of the Canfield walkway. It is pretty dirty right now. There's I don't know, all kinds of stuff on it. So can we sweep it in? Maybe somehow with a sweeper. And the fence. Our snow cleaning machine ripped into the fence. And there's a breach on one side of the fence.
In the catwalk.
And the catwalk on the north side that needs to be repaired.
Three words. Sorry, there last week, I didn't walk all of Canfield, we were on our Reitman Stewart for fiber optics, so I'll look into that fence and have staff check that out tomorrow.
Towards Park. Towards Park, when you're walking, come up Park and walk towards Canfield, but it's on towards the park north side. You'll see that there's an area there where the machine, I guess, touched the fence on the way to or whatever happened.
Okay.
Okay, but it needs to be repaired again.
All right, and we did start with our sidewalk sweeping last week with our own equipment, town equipment. We had to shut that down because it was too wet. Part of that was the tracks where the trackless has got off and tore it up. Topsoil was just being sprayed out in the driveway, so it's making a mess of it. So we had to shut it down for weather conditions there last week, but they are on it now starting in the south end, so we'll make sure that they don't miss Canfield on the way up. Topsoiling is also starting, like I mentioned, we started with Thunderfield to get that out of the way. We do have our summer students lined up, so we're hoping once we get them into. We do it every year, we'll go back out and patch up all the sidewalk areas where the trackless is wandered off and whatnot. So
I appreciate that, Ally, I'm not gonna be assaulted anymore.
Okay, Councillor Bouchard.
So I have, hate to say it, parking. Downtown parking, a number of businesses have expressed concerns about vehicles staying longer than 3 hours minimum. Some, yeah, and also parking in both of the disabled spots to the west of Owen Sound, and then they create a space in behind that disabled spot on the north end of Main, behind Owen Sound in front of the bank. I'm just wondering if there's enforcement protocols in place and if they're happening.
Through your worship, yes, we have the overnight winter parking staff member now switching to an evening shift. That it was, we're ramped up last week. We will be having that person also do so we're targeted parking enforcement for the accessible spots. I can tell you that the accessible spots are being enforced, and while it may not look like there's a sticker, you can't see one. They are accessible vehicles that are parking there.
Part of the TD, they pull in behind that accessible spot and do the banking and leave a vehicle there for 15-20 minutes. And
yes, those are targeted spots that will be, there'll be a campaign on that.
okay.
I was just waiting for our winter parking enforcement officer to finish his night shifts.
Right.
And just have daily shifts.
Just anecdotally, Friday afternoon, I came out of TD Bank, saw our bylaw officer
Yes.
in the act of writing a ticket, so discreetly gave it a thumbs up.
One thing I've asked.
Tires, I guess, like the.
Yeah, yes, one thing I've asked for Public Works is that the or operations is they paint the line, like the lines there, it's difficult to determine what is an actual parking space, they've worn off, right? I know that is on the project to-do list for them, first thing, as soon as the downtown forest need. It would also help our officers with the shopping and tires. And that being said, when we bring in a district monetary penalty system, It's an automated parking enforcement that no longer will be required to shop tires. It's a plate reader, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right. Any other inquiries?
Nope.
Okay, all right, there is. Okay, on to reports. The first report is with respect to an additional council member that's needed for our police service board. Just very quickly, the composition of our board is changing as a result of some provincial mandates. We're going from a 5-member board to a 7-member board, which requires us to appoint an additional member of council as well as procure another public member. Advertising is out for the public member already. And I think our appointments committee is going to be meeting soon. May 1st. Okay, to go over those, but that leaves the additional council member. Is there anybody who is particularly interested in that spot?
That is the only board in all my life. I do not sat on it, but not. That's the only one, so.
Find that hard to believe.
Hard to believe, like
After 100 years of service.
Right?
Yeah. Only board, I have not sat on.
Perfect. It's yours.
Okay, can I have a mover and seconder then to appoint Councilmember Donato? Okay, there we go. Moved by Bouchard, seconded by Wagner, that council appoint Councilor Donato as our 3rd council member on the police service board. So myself and the deputy mayor are on there now. Okay, all right, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, next is our bylaw to strike rates of taxation and provide for penalty and interest in default thereof for the 2024 calendar year. Pretty standard stuff, but do you want to speak to that at all, Carrie?
Sure, thank you. Through the mayor, this is our final tax rate bylaw for 2024, and it is reflective of the 5% increase in the tax rate as adopted with the budget process.
And this will start in after June, right?
Correct. The final billing is mailed the first week of July.
Okay, so we just need a motion for the reading and enacting of that bylaw moved by Councilor Donato, seconded by Councilor Sherry. All in favor? It's carried, okay. Next is a request from the Picking Park folks, I think similar to requests we've had in the past, which is essentially to permit smoking at Fiddle Park during their event. I think, as was the case in previous years, there's no smoking in and around the pavilion. I think more or less what they're looking for is to allow people to smoke kind of at their campsites. I think we approved this last year without any additional restrictions, so.
Yeah.
And I don't think there were any problems, so.
No.
Okay. Okay, so it's moved by Councilor Donato. Second by Councilor Desjardins. All in favor? It's carried. All right, and the last item under this section is a request from our high school to waive some fees for the facilities at the Natasha Patterson Park / Highland Park for our rugby team, who's going to be hosting, is it the OSSA?
OSSA, yes.
Yeah, OSSA Championships. Again, I think they did this last year too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's 4 days in total, I guess. And then it's, I think, and it's 24th, yeah. So the total cost associated with that, if we waive the fees, would be $290.52, which includes HSTs. In my mind, probably a good way to support the whole high school team.
I'll move with you.
The community knows where I stand.
Any? Okay, sorry, so the recommended motion is just to receive, so we'll just no route to that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, all in favor? That's carried. All right, any notices of motion? Right, communications, anything in that list that caught anybody's attention?
Number 9. In regard to pushing the Heritage Act, Ontario Heritage Act, beyond 2015. Or pardon me, correction, 2025 to 2030. We read a letter of support.
Okay, so support the city of Kitchener resolution. Okay, so. Do a seconder for that. Mr. Wagner. All in favor? Carried.
Was gonna bring that one up too.
All right, so
No, it's okay, so I'm on Heritage Committee, so I was like, yeah, we need a little bit more time to, decide on
Yeah.
what's heritage and what's not and all that, so.
anything else there?
I was kind of thinking number 10, it's a weird one, like, well, I mean. It kind of makes sense, like, I worry that the push to electricity is so great right now, where I feel like we still need a secondary option, right? Like, gas is a little bit more, I don't know, me looking at my gas bill and my hydro bill, my gas bill is more reasonable, right? So I feel like we still need to have that level of access to make sure it doesn't disappear.
Anybody who has a generator is gonna be running on gas.
The issue, I think, is the fact that they want to make the developers pay for putting the gas lines in, whereas before it was the homeowners that were paying for it at one point in time. Like, if I wanted a gas line, it was part of the cost of my house when it went in.
Right.
So the province is moving towards, making sure that it still stays the way it is. And making, that it's not on homeowners and that it is.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so
And then the other part of it is that the feds want to remove gas completely.
Yeah, and that's what I don't,
And that's where,
Yeah.
that's a bit of an issue as well. And electricity. If we are gonna have all electric cars in 2035, we're gonna have all electric houses in 2035. And we're gonna have everything electric, where's it coming from? Bingo.
that's, no, that's my concern too, to be honest with you, that's why.
We are already generating enough right now.
Yeah.
To maintain what we need at the current levels we're at. And I'm worried that once we get up the electric vehicles and the electric, whatever, to power them up and the homes and everything else. We're gonna have real blackout.
Well, that's usually my argument, is we have rolling blackouts in the summer with regards to air conditioning, and not every home has a car charging in the driveway, right? So,
That's all second.
yeah, so I feel like we just need to make sure we continue to utilize, some other areas as well. I mean, nothing is perfect, right? I mean, it's sort of a non-renewable resource, it's a fossil fuel, but we still need to be looking at all options instead of just focusing on one.
Okay, so we have that resolution from Clinton, Wyoming. Support that, so it's moved by Wagner, seconded by Bernardo, all in favor? It's carried.
And then the final one for me is number 11. I'd like to make sure that does, we're having a litter. If you walk around, there's a lot of litter. I just had to walk by the plaza by the Petro-Canada at Greenwood, and if you walk down Besley Creek behind there, it's a disaster with the amount of litter that's gone into that area. And unfortunately, on a windy day, any day, when there's blue boxes out on the streets, it seems like the wind has found them. Either the blue box or what's in it is going down the street, and people don't clean up after themselves.
And that's actually the day after our next council meeting, so maybe we can.
Well,
I was thinking highlight it,
Yeah.
I can highlight it that night and just remind everybody.
Maybe have a social media post go out or something like that, too.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully every day people are doing their part to pick up litter when they see it, but.
Can we request that all, a private, owner, like, for other retail establishment put up garbage cans, or as something they just either do or don't do? Cause yeah, no, cause there's nothing along that.
Well, I'm just wondering.
I was trying to I was walking with my Tim Hortons cup and I just had to hold it, cause there was nowhere for me to put it, so.
No, but behind it, you guys, I don't say all the liquor comes from that particular establishment.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
but
that.
behind there, I used to remember, and I don't know, Len, if you remember, but there was a day when the high school students would come out and do cleanup.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they still do that. But if, we, like May 14th, for example, would be great to get a proclamation out where maybe even the high school students or whatever would come out and do a general cleanup within certain sections of the town.
We used to do it with Girl Guides and Brownies and Sparks as well.
Yeah, all the different organizations, like, the closest. Because it's a Tuesday, that may not be the right day, but a Saturday or the Saturday after would be a fantastic day. Maybe also involve Rotary and some of the other organizations in town, Kinsmen and whatnot, to get out there and help these people, because they need to have, some of the older people to make sure the safety is there for, especially in Browns or.
Yeah. Is there a way too that if a community group did sort of set up a day like that, that we could handle the trash removal as the town, pick it up and kind of. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because that would be very helpful too, right? If people are dedicating their time to go and clean it up. It might be tricky for them to then pay for the dump or take it to the dump, if we could kind of say, call in town staff, say, listen, I cleaned up this area, there's 2 bags of garbages. You're, sitting there, can you come and collect it or whatever, and we we're taking care of it that way. That would be really helpful too. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, all right. Can I have a motion then to receive the remaining items listed under number 8 for communications?
Go for it, Lindsay.
Then I'm not adjourning.
Moved by Councilor Wagner, seconded by Councilor Donato, all in favor? Carried. All right, closed session being deferred. Can I have a motion for our confirmed vote? Come on. Councilor Wagner, seconded by Councilor Bishardi. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Bishardi, seconded by Councilor Donato. All in favor? Carried.